Captain Peter Cutty, South Korea, and this is my briefing room. This is the landing procedure and also the landing roll procedure. The landing procedure does have a checklist. The landing roll procedure doesn't have a checklist. So we're going to discuss the landing procedure. It basically begins where the approach procedure left off. That is, we're going to start configuring for flaps because we are anticipating a straight-in ILS runway 30 left in Dubai. So let's have a look at that from the FCOM. I've got a PowerPoint or PowerPoints for the landing procedure and the landing roll procedure that you can use to study, and that's in my library in Google Drive. So here is the landing procedure directly from the FCOM. Now, initially, if on radar vectors, we're not, but if you were, you use heading select, of course. We're going direct to the final fix for the ILS for runway 30 left in Dubai. Pitch mode is required. Well, once we get dynamic here, I'm going to use level change because we're close to the airport, and really VNAV has no meaning unless you were cleared for a non-precision approach from the top of descent to touchdown, and which doesn't happen. So we will use level change. And then once we're cleared for the approach, we'll arm approach. So this is something that you should look at. And pilot monitoring, notify the cabin crew to prepare for landing and verify that the cabin is secure. So that normally is done prior to leaving 10,000 feet. So we'll say that that has been done. And if for some reason it wasn't, then you would make sure that you do it at this point. And most companies in their SOPs have communication with the cabin attendants more than once in a descent, perhaps up to 3 times. In any case, in this particular circumstance, it's probably 2 times or whatever your company SOPs would indicate, because they're busy preparing the cabin for landing. The pilot flying select terrain on map, and the pilot monitoring select terrain or weather radar on the map. And pilot flying CDU on the actual route legs page. So I'll make sure that I select the legs page because I'm the pilot flying. And a good page for the pilot monitoring to be on would be progress 2/4, or whatever the page would be if you have a CDU with 5 progress pages. FMC CDU 15.0, I stand to be corrected, and beyond could have, I think, 5 progress pages. In any case, find the progress page that gives you crosswind, tailwind, headwind components, and that's invaluable for the pilot monitoring to be on. Follow your company SOPs. All right. So we will actually start to take flap very shortly once we're cleared for the approach. And the pilot monitoring will select flaps as directed. And on the approach schedule. And now many airports have speed restrictions up to certain distance, certain miles from touchdown. So you want to follow those speed restrictions. We'll say for the all intents purposes today, there are no speed restrictions. Incidentally, Dubai does. You have to maintain a certain speed of 180 knots up to so many miles, and then 160 knots up to so many miles from touchdown. We'll waive all of that today for this demonstration. All right. This applies for non-precision approach, which we're going to get into in a future video. We've already set our minimum, 260 on both the barrel bugs, and we've checked it. And by the way, when we did the descent and the approach checklist, we verified that. So that's been done. Now, the next thing is approaching when the glide slope is alive, gear down, flaps 15, speed brakes armed. So the pilot flying calls for gear down, flaps 15, and the pilot monitoring will place the landing gear down, verify that the indicator lights are illuminated green, select flaps to flaps 15, and then up to the engine start switches to continue it. So I'll try to get all of that done. It's going to be a busy time. You'll have to bear with me running around in the video, but you'll get the picture, pardon the pun. And then the pilot flying, which is the captain, then will arm the speed brakes and make sure that the speed brake arm light is illuminated. You'll have to take my word for it. We may not see that because of my busy time working with the software. Important. And begin the final approach descent. That is, once you, just prior to the intercept of the glide slope, your final flap setting. Not too soon, because if you take your final flap setting too soon, the thrust levers are going to move up. We're going to be doing an auto approach because of this being a demonstration. I'll make sure that the second autopilot is armed before 800 feet above ground. I'll do it once we're cleared for the approach. You'll see me reach up and actually arm the second autopilot so that we can actually watch and I can actually teach what's happening, and it'll be done right. And then we're going to set the airspeed bug of VREF +5. There's virtually no wind at the field in Dubai today, and our VREF is 136 knots, so the bug will be set to 141 knots. And then call for the landing checklist. That there is a checklist, and it's done after these items are completed, after the landing flap is selected, and normally after the landing flap is selected, the missed approach altitude would be actually selected. Now that will be after the checklist is done, and when you're at least 300 feet below the missed approach altitude. The missed approach altitude today for Dubai for the ILS for runway 30 left is 3,000 feet. All right, so we'll do all that, and one of the very important things that isn't emphasized enough in aviation is what pilots do when they go by the final fix. It's not just called by the final fix. You want to check your altitude. Now, we're on an electronic glide slope. And in Dubai, for instance, the temperatures sometimes are super hot. Let's say 50 degrees. Well, on the glide slope, you're following an electronic glide slope. You can expect that actual reading on your altimeters to be quite low. You can use that Flyby E6B app that I talked about in other briefings to actually confirm what you're expecting the altimeter to read on a glide slope, electronic glide slope, in super hot temperatures. Your altitude is going to read low, and you have to talk about it. Conversely, if you were at an airport in northern Russia in the wintertime and the temperature was -35, and you were established on an ILS glide slope, you can expect that the actual altitude that you're going to read on the baro altimeters will be very high. Remember, the chart value is only good for ISA conditions. Very important. All right. And by the final fix, you want to make sure of that, and that, of course, the missed approach altitude should be set. You've already done it, but if you haven't, you would make sure it's done at that point. And also be triggered mentally what you're going to do if you have to go around. On the 737, you can use your fingernail as a suggestion to just be touching the go-around switch on either thrust lever. Don't push it, but you want to feel for it very gently without triggering it, so that you are ready in the event that you have to go around. That's a tip, all right? And that's from experience in aviation and flying, because most pilots, when they have to go around, don't expect it. And when it's time to do it, it's not done right. That's why we did a review back there when we did the descent procedure and we read off the approach. You remember what we did? We talked about the go-around procedure. All right, you should be thinking about it anyhow. All right. So there's lots going on in your head when you go by the final fix. Also, you're looking at your windsock on your nav display, and you're getting the wind from the tower. If they're the same, no wind shear on final. If they're not the same, you're going to have wind shear. Oh, hello. So final fix means final chance to get several important things accomplished. Remember that. Important. All right. So that basically is the landing procedure. We're going to go right into the landing roll procedure because it comes very quickly. And we're going to be doing an auto land. We haven't briefed for it, but we're just doing it for a demonstration because I'm by myself on the flight deck. And it's good because the autopilot is going to do probably a heck of a better job than I could ever do. In any case, it's a good way to teach you, if you're an ab initio pilot, of what your instructor will be doing with you. He'll actually let you do it, or you should be doing an auto approach and landing before you're doing visual approaches and landing, so that you can see how to do it. So today will be a good example of that. All right, and once the aircraft touches down, we'll have to disengage the autopilot so that we can manually roll out. Well, we're going to leave the autopilot engaged today, and just to see what happens with the software. But on touchdown, because I'm the only one on the flight deck, the autopilot should be disengaged, and the auto throttles will disengage 2 seconds after the main wheel is touched. And if they don't, you do it. And lower the nose wheel within 2 seconds of touchdown. Now, the autopilot will do it today, but if you were doing it manually, when the main wheels touch, within 2 seconds, you should gently allow the nose wheel to touch. And within that 2 seconds, the auto throttles will disengage. You want to make sure that they're disengaged. If you were flying the flight manually, they wouldn't be engaged. So we'll make sure all of that happens when we touch down. And then reverse is selected. The captain will select reverse. And the first officer, who is now the pilot monitoring, will verify the speed brake lever is up. And if not, and if they are, call speed brakes up or speed brake lever not up, or speed brakes not up. So if the speed brake lever is not up, speed brakes not up, call. Well, we won't go through that today, because there's only one person on the flight deck, but it's important that you know the procedure. And that's why we're going through it. And most pilots will monitor the roll progress and verify auto brake operation, of course. And remember that the warning is that once the reverse is selected, there's no going around. Very important. And calling the reversers normal if everything is normal. And if there's no reverse indication and the reverser stays amber, the pilot monitoring, no reverse engine number 1 or no reverse engine number 2 or no reversers. By 60 knots, the captain will start movement of the thrust levers to the reverse idle dedent, and be at the reverse idle dedent, for forward idle, I should say, by taxi speed, which is normally 45 knots indicated. Okay. And before taxi speed, disarm the auto brake. The after landing procedure comes in the next video. So that's it. So let's just go and do it. We are dynamic, and we've been cleared to 4,000 feet. And so we will actually get doing that right now. Level change, when you touch a switch, make sure you touch the switch, that you get the light on, and that you go over and make sure that you get the correct indication on the PFD, which we have. Okay, MCP speed and the auto throttles arm, and we're descending. We now have been cleared to descend to 3,000 feet, and we're cleared to maintain 2,000 feet, and we're cleared for the ILS approach. And on clearance for the ILS approach, we'll arm approach. And we're also going to engage the second autopilot. So 2 autopilots in command, and we are descending. And we're high, so we want to make sure that we do use speed brakes. So here's our vertical path, which you can see here. We'll toggle the control column out of view here. And we are regaining path, if you can see here. And this tool is important, and that's why the FMC was set up that way. That and there's the actual glide slope here. So we are going to 2,000 feet. We want to get ourselves below the glide slope, and then we'll start slowing down. So here we are at getting very close to 20 nautical miles to touchdown. So, all right, we're pretty much on schedule for the glide path. We'll get ourselves below the glide path, then we'll start bringing our speed back. The Vorlock has been armed and the glide slope is armed. And we are below the actual glide path, which is good because we're going to have to decrease our rate of descent so that we can start slowing. There we have it, Vorlock and single channel. And that's because of the distance, it's correct. And now the aircraft is adjusting to the localizer, which is doing fine and dandy. So let's just bring the speed brakes, retract. Let's retract the speed brakes. And we'll call for our first flap setting. Now, normally about around 12 nautical miles to touchdown, you want, in level flight, you would start to configure for flap. So because I'm going to be a busy guy, let's start to configure for flap now, and we'll bring our speed back. So we're configuring now, and we'll start bringing our speed back. And there's the airport environment in front of us. And there's flap 1. Single channel Vorlock. We'll go up and bring our speed bug back to flap 1 speed. Very close to the speed restriction really going into Dubai, 180 knots, so many miles from touchdown. And we're in a slight descent, which is fine. Glide path intercept is 2,000, but it doesn't mean you go to 2,000 feet. You don't want to go down and level off and increase thrust. You want to a non-interrupted descent so that it's economical as far as thrust is concerned. So we're looking good with respect to that. And now we will change our scale so we can have a better look at what we're doing here. So we're about 12 nautical miles now, roughly, from touchdown. Let's go to the next flap 7. Let's go to flaps 5. Now, I wouldn't say that. In flight, you say flaps 5. And the pilot monitoring selects flaps 5 and then speed set, or whatever your company SOP say. So we're at flaps 5, and we'll go to, we'll bring the speed bug back to flaps 5 speed.
Thousand to go.
Check. Now remember, we're dual channel.
2,500.
2,500 radio altimeter alive. So that course should be 299. We had a little message on our PFD, if you noticed, in amber, and that's why I've just come up. We had the message up here in amber. Very smart system. All right. So speed brakes are armed. All right. We're going to leave them armed. There's altitude acquire, MCP speed. We're going to leave them armed because I can't get to them later. So I would only arm them later in the actual landing procedure. So we're looking good. Level at 2,000 feet. And we're 10 nautical miles from touchdown. And flat 5 speed. Single channel, that won't turn to command, indicating both autopilots are engaged until we're below 1,500 feet, roughly 9 seconds after we leave 1,500 feet. We'll see how good the software is. So we've been cleared for the ILS approach. We've been switched over to director, and then director switched us to tower south. And we're speaking to Tower South now, and we were told to call by Modus inbound. If you had the VSD on your aircraft, you would actually have it selected as per the company ruling. There it is there. And that could be on both, or maybe just the pilot monitoring. Glide slope alive, gear down. Flat 15, speed brakes armed. And set flat 15 speed. And we're just about intercepting the glide slope now, so flat 30. And set debug 136 plus 5, which will be 141 knots. And call for the landing check. And then, of course, set the missed approach altitude. Let's get over and do that now because I'm a busy guy. And the landing checklist has been complete. Missed approach altitude is set. Let's just have a quick blue outside and see what things look like. There we are in a visual environment in Dubai. And let's come back into the flight deck. The VSD is giving us a good picture indicating that we do have, in fact, the correct altimeter set. We left 1,500 feet, and roughly 9 seconds later, we should get an indication here that we got both autopilots engaged. Let's just make sure that's the case. I can't slip up there now and see, but we should have, and we should get an indication of command. If not, we have to get it done by 800 feet. No, they tripped off. So we'll make sure we get it selected on. Good thing we got it.
1,000.
1,000.
1,000 feet stabilized, Mr. Birch, altitude set.
Okay, land 3. There's no such thing on the 737. That's the 747-400. That's a glitch in the software. It should say command, right? Forget land 3, command. And they missed approach altitude at set. And roll out flare arm. A lot happens, and we would actually have a radio altitude set for the DH, but we didn't do that because of what I previously mentioned. But we're going to get into proper Cat 3, Cat 3B approaches and landings in another video.
500.
Check. On the Poppy. Software's good.
Approaching minimums. Approaching minimums. 300.
Continue.
Minimums.
Continue.
200. $50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Okay, end of video. We would disengage the autopilot, of course, and select reverse, and the auto throttles would have disengaged 2 seconds after touchdown. The nose wheel did lower within 2 seconds of touchdown, and we got normal reverse, and we're going to slow, and then we'll taxi off the runway. This ends the landing procedure and after landing procedure. Remember what I briefed on as far as selecting reverse and the call outs by the pilot monitoring, which is always the first officer on the ground. And the captain will initiate coming out of reverse at 60 knots and be at forward idle by 45 knots and then taxi off the runway. Now, if you were going to the terminal on the north side of the field, there is a live runway that you'll be crossing, so no checks are done. Nothing is done until you're on the other side of runway 30 right. Nothing. The captain will probably have to taxi, thus the speed brake lever will retract, and your SOPs normally say when the captain retracts the speed brake lever, go ahead with the after landing procedure, but don't do it until you're clear of all runways. The captain may do one thing with lights. He may adjust the lights depending on the traffic on runway 30 right. Landing on 30 left with takeoffs on 30 right, you don't want to be blinding the pilot taking off on runway 30 right with landing lights or turn-off lights. So that's all airmanship. But the after landing procedure, which is the next video, will cater for everything we do after landing. Hope you enjoyed this video. Stay professional, stay passionate. See you in the next video and see you in the future.